From the first moment the world noticed him, Simon Cowell carried an intensity that felt almost otherworldly. Eyes sharp enough to unsettle, instincts refined like a master instrument. He possessed a rare ability to sense potential long before it revealed itself. He did not simply judge talent. He recognized destiny in its earliest, most fragile form. From obscurity to dominance, his journey rose from a forgotten mailroom desk to the absolute summit of global entertainment. Few individuals have ever reshaped popular culture so decisively. Unknown singers became household names. Modest auditions transformed into global phenomena. For more than 20 years, Simon Cowell ignited dreams, altered careers, and redefined what televised competition could be. He was not merely part of the industry. He became its axis. Behind American Idol, The X Factor, and Got Talent stood his singular vision. A mind that fused instinct with ruthlessness, precision with spectacle. His empire expanded across continents, generating admiration and envy in equal measure. Mansions stretching from the United States to the United Kingdom. A fleet of luxury cars gleaming like trophies. A fortune so vast it defied easy comprehension. Annual earnings soaring into tens of millions. Properties and possessions accumulated not as indulgence, but as markers of a life relentlessly driven. To the world, it appeared effortless. A man blessed with everything. Yet beneath the polished exterior, the story was far darker. The battlefield was internal. Simon Cowell faced depression, crushing self-doubt, and later, a catastrophic injury that nearly ended his life. He stood at the peak of wealth while confronting the quiet truth of emptiness. Preparing one day to leave behind an estimated $600 million, he shocked audiences by declaring he would not pass his fortune to his son. A statement that stunned fans and exposed a raw philosophy shaped by pain, ambition, and hard-earned clarity. The Malibu beachfront mansion, the Beverly Hills estate, the New York apartment, the stately London home. Symbols of triumph, yes, but also reminders of the cost. Bugatti, Rolls-Royce, Ferrari, Bentley, machines of motion, echoing a life that never stopped moving, never slowed enough to rest. Before the power, before the influence, Simon Cowell was simply a boy shaped by silence and pressure. Born in 1959 in Lambeth, London, his childhood unfolded in the quieter corners of Elstree, Hertfordshire. His mother, Julie Brett, once a graceful ballet dancer, carried elegance in every gesture. Yet warmth often felt distant. His father, Eric Selig Philip Cowell, a formidable music executive and property developer, demanded excellence but rarely offered affirmation. Praise was scarce, pride unspoken. Simon grew up hungry for validation that never arrived. He later reflected that the words, "I'm proud of you," were never spoken when he needed them most. That absence carved a hollow space that echoed throughout his youth. School offered no refuge. At Radlett Preparatory and later Dover College, he struggled against structure and authority. Rules felt suffocating, expectations unreachable. He scraped through with minimal qualifications before dropping out entirely, lost, restless, burdened by disappointment in himself. A series of odd jobs followed, each one ending in rejection. Confidence eroded with every failure. Eventually, through family connection rather than merit, he found himself at EMI Music, a mailroom clerk delivering coffee, sorting letters, watching success pass him by without acknowledgement. Invisible, forgettable, a ghost in the corridors of ambition, each attempt to leave ended in rejection. Each return felt like humiliation, but survival demanded endurance. From that humiliation, something unyielding began to grow. In 1983, armed with little more than desperation and belief, Simon co-founded Fanfare Records. It was not glamorous. Workout tapes, novelty tracks, but it was his. In 1986, a small breakthrough arrived with So Macho by Sanita, a modest hit. Enough to pay bills, enough to restore hope, but the industry is merciless. By 1989, the company collapsed. Bankruptcy followed. Nearing 30, Simon returned to his childhood bedroom, dreams deferred, pride shattered. He later admitted to crying alone, believing his life had already peaked. Yet even then, the spark endured. His ascent was not a fairy tale. It was a relentless confrontation with failure, a brutal education in resilience. Proof that greatness is often born in the darkest hours. Music. This was not luck, it was endurance. Brick by brick, Simon Cowell constructed an empire forged through rejection and resolve. Long before the applause, he navigated the unforgiving world of British pop. He learned what critics dismissed and audiences embraced. During the 1990s, through S Records, he signed acts many mocked, television themes, novelty songs. Yet he understood mass appeal as power, patience as armor. In 1995, his production of Unchained Melody dominated the UK charts, a defining success that silenced doubt. Then came the turning point. Pop Idol. Standing before cameras as a judge, his blunt honesty electrified viewers. Controversy followed. Fascination grew. He spoke truths others avoided. That authenticity propelled him to American Idol, transforming him into a global figure and elevating his earnings to staggering heights. By the mid-2000s, The X Factor and Got Talent cemented his status as the architect of modern entertainment. Yet labels followed, harsh, cold, cruel. Accusations of manipulation shadowed his success. His response was unwavering. Truth mattered more than comfort. By 2010, his influence spanned continents. Careers launched, empires expanded. But the cost was severe: exhaustion, isolation, endless scrutiny. Fame widened the void it promised to fill. Annual earnings soared, sometimes surpassing $100 million, yet fulfillment remained elusive. Behind tailored suits and commanding presence lay a man questioning everything. Triumph and devastation intertwined. Admiration came with an unbearable weight. From the height of his televised dominance, Simon Cowell appeared untouchable. Yet the years that followed revealed how fragile even the most carefully constructed lives can be. Fame did not shield him from scandal. In 2013, the glare of public judgment burned hotter than any spotlight he had ever commanded. News broke that he was expecting a child with Lauren Silverman, the wife of a close friend. The reaction was immediate and unforgiving. Headlines erupted, whispers hardened into condemnation. The world that once applauded him now dissected his private life with merciless precision. Andrew Silverman, Lauren's husband at the time, filed for divorce, and the fallout was swift. Friendships fractured. Alliances dissolved. For a man who had spent decades thriving under observation, the attention became suffocating. Simon later admitted the shame and regret weighed heavily on him. He did not attempt to justify his actions. Instead, he acknowledged the damage and carried the burden quietly. Yet within the wreckage of reputation and trust, something unexpected emerged. In February 2014, his son Eric was born. In that moment, the relentless executive, the global tastemaker, the feared judge was stripped of every title. He became simply a father. Eric's arrival altered the rhythm of Simon's life. The pace slowed, the priorities shifted. Boardrooms and contracts gave way to bedtime stories and building toys on the floor. He spoke openly about how fatherhood grounded him, offering a sense of purpose no award or fortune ever had. The scandal had cost him dearly, but his son gave him something irreplaceable: a reason to heal, a reason to change. Those closest to him noticed the difference immediately. The sharp edges softened, the impatience eased. A man long defined by control learned presence. Yet redemption did not erase loss. In 2015, grief struck with devastating force. Simon's mother, Julie Brett, passed away at the age of 89. To the public, it was the quiet end of a long life. To Simon, it was an emotional collapse. Julie had been a constant thread through his turbulent years, a figure of grace and quiet strength. Her absence reopened old wounds and stirred regrets long buried. Only 16 years earlier, in 1999, Simon had lost his father, Eric Cowell, a man whose approval he had chased but never fully received. His father never witnessed Simon's rise from bankruptcy to global acclaim. That unspoken absence lingered. Now, with both parents gone, Simon felt untethered. Friends described him during this period as withdrawn and fragile. The man known for unshakable confidence was reduced to silence. He admitted publicly that losing his mother was the hardest experience of his life. No success, no applause could fill the void she left behind. The timing was cruel. He had just embraced the joy of new fatherhood, and now grief shadowed that happiness. Life gave and took in the same breath, yet even in mourning, transformation continued. Simon began to speak more openly about family, about time lost to ambition. Patience replaced urgency, vulnerability replaced bravado. The losses etched themselves into him, visible in the pauses between words, in the softened gaze of a man who had seen too much. Then came the moment that nearly ended everything. In August 2020, under the Malibu sun, Simon tested a new electric bike at home. A single mistake sent him crashing violently to the ground. His back shattered in multiple places. Surgery followed. Hours under anesthesia. Metal rods implanted into his spine. Recovery was brutal. Pain eclipsed anything he had endured before. Nights stretched endlessly. The empire paused. The cameras moved on. For the first time, Simon confronted mortality not as an abstract fear, but as a tangible reality. Throughout the agony, one thought anchored him: Eric. His young son became the reason to fight through pain and despair. Each step, each movement was a battle. Progress came slowly, painfully. Entire seasons of television passed without him. His identity, once tied to relentless productivity, fractured, yet resilience resurfaced. He learned humility through helplessness, then fate tested him again. In 2022, another e-bike accident left him injured once more. The world mocked, headlines trivialized the suffering, but the deeper wound was existential. Control, he realized, was an illusion. As his body healed, Simon confronted another reckoning. Years of cosmetic procedures had altered his appearance dramatically. By 2021, public reaction was harsh. Headlines questioned what had happened to his face. The man once infamous for judging appearances became the subject of ridicule. This time, Simon responded with honesty. He admitted he had gone too far. He stopped all procedures, choosing to let time mark him naturally. The decision was not about vanity. It was about acceptance. Aging, pain, and scrutiny converged, forcing him to reevaluate his relationship with the spotlight. Gradually, he withdrew. Appearances became rare. His focus narrowed to what truly mattered: Eric, health, presence. The empire continued to generate wealth, but Simon no longer chased visibility. He spoke quietly about no longer needing to dominate screens, about wanting simply to be present for his son's laughter. Yet the world remained relentless. Every wrinkle, every step was analyzed. Still he endured, slower, older, unmistakably human. By the time the world believed Simon Cowell had already endured every possible trial, fate revealed how much deeper loss could cut. In the autumn of 2024, tragedy struck with ruthless finality. Payne, one of the original voices of One Direction, a young man Simon had helped guide from raw audition nerves to global superstardom, died after a fall from a hotel balcony in Buenos Aires. The news detonated across continents. Fans froze in disbelief. Candlelight vigils spread. Headlines raced. But none of it captured the devastation that settled over Simon Cowell. This was not merely the passing of a former contestant or industry success story. For Simon, it felt personal, intimate, irreversible. His voice trembled as he acknowledged the loss, admitting that Liam had felt like a son to him. Coming from a man so long associated with restraint and sharp judgment, the words carried immense weight. They cracked the armor he had worn for decades. In that moment, the global impresario disappeared, replaced by a grieving mentor confronting a pain that fame could not anesthetize. Liam's death reopened wounds Simon had never fully healed. It echoed the loss of his father in 1999, a man whose approval he chased long after it was no longer possible to receive. It summoned memories of his mother Julie's passing in 2015, when the world had gone quiet in ways applause could never replace. Grief returned not as a single event, but as an accumulation. Layer upon layer of love lost, each one reinforcing the truth that success offers no immunity from sorrow. As the world mourned publicly, Simon retreated inward. Projects paused. Interviews were declined. The constant hum of production fell silent. Those close to him observed a profound shift. He became fiercely present at home, clinging to routines with Eric as though anchoring himself against further loss. Walks replaced meetings. Evenings grew quiet and deliberate. Bedtime rituals became sacred acts. This was not withdrawal born of fear, but reflection shaped by grief. He revisited old footage in private, early auditions, nervous smiles, moments when hope was untested and futures still unwritten. Watching Liam and the other boys again was both comfort and torment. It was a way to honor what had been, while acknowledging what could never return. The empire he had built had always been about discovering talent, but now he confronted the human cost behind the spectacle. Fame magnified joy, but it also amplified vulnerability. Out of this crucible emerged clarity. The priorities that had been shifting for years crystallized completely. Ratings faded in importance. Accolades lost their shine. What remained was presence, love, the quiet responsibility of being there. Simon, once driven by a relentless momentum, now measured time differently. Laughter replaced applause. Connection replaced conquest. Liam's death became a final anchor, grounding him in a life far removed from the glare that once defined him. In grief, Simon found a deeper understanding of himself. He recognized that legacy was not solely built through stars launched or fortunes amassed, but through the lives touched and the care extended beyond the cameras. The man who had spent decades shaping dreams now confronted the fragility behind them. Loss stripped away illusion, leaving something raw and honest in its place. As he entered 2025, Simon Cowell stood transformed. No longer the feared arbiter of talent shows, but a survivor marked by scars, reflection, and hard-won humility. He continued to appear on Got Talent, but the tone had changed. Judgment softened to guidance. Authority gave way to wisdom. Every word carried the weight of pain endured and lessons learned. Strength, he realized, did not need to announce itself loudly. It could exist quietly, steadily, in the choice to keep going. At home, his world told a different story from the one the public once knew. His Beverly Hills residence became a sanctuary shaped by discipline and tenderness. Mornings were slow and intentional, marked by careful movement to protect a spine forever altered by injury. Health routines replaced excess. Each decision became a negotiation between endurance and acceptance. Yet the deepest fear was not physical decline, but vision loss. For a man whose life had revolved around seeing potential in others, the thought of not seeing his son clearly haunted him. Evenings unfolded gently, bike rides along the coast. Music shared softly, stories read with patience and devotion. These moments, simple and fleeting, carried more meaning than any contract ever had. The empire continued quietly in the background. Properties across continents, a fortune exceeding $600 million, supercars resting unused, a private jet flown sparingly. Wealth remained, but it no longer commanded him. Simon made his intentions clear. His son would not inherit excess but values. His fortune would flow into foundations, healthcare initiatives, and opportunities for children who might otherwise never be seen. Youth was no longer something to chase. Aging became a badge of survival. Lines on his face told the truth of a life fully lived, fully tested. In this season, Simon Cowell embodied a universal truth. Fame fades, wealth fluctuates, health falters. That love endures, purpose evolves. Legacy is shaped not by perfection, but by the courage to change after failure, to remain open after loss, and to love fiercely in the face of uncertainty. He became something unexpected, a man no longer defined by dominance, but by empathy. A father guarding time as if it were the most precious resource of all. A survivor who understood that grace is not forged in triumph, but in endurance. Time reshaped Simon Cowell in ways no headline ever could. As the noise of controversy, loss, and relentless expectation slowly receded, what remained was a man learning to live deliberately. Each day was no longer measured by schedules and ratings, but by how much presence he could offer the moments that mattered. Pain lingered in his spine, stiffness greeting him each morning like an unwelcome reminder of fragility. Yet he rose carefully, committed to healing not just his body, but the spirit that had once been driven to exhaustion. Pilates sessions became rituals of survival, slow and precise, guarding against the catastrophic injury that had nearly claimed his life. Meals were chosen with intention rather than indulgence. Health was no longer optional. It was a necessity. Even then, challenges persisted. His eyesight began to falter, decades of strain and injury converging into a fear he admitted quietly. For a man whose empire was built on recognizing brilliance at a glance, the thought of losing clarity terrified him more than public judgment ever had. What haunted him most was the possibility of not seeing his son's face clearly as the years passed. Yet Simon did not surrender to fear. He adapted. Evenings glowed with intimacy. Music played softly at home. Fingers traced piano keys with careful attention. Laughter echoed through rooms once reserved for solitude. The routines of fatherhood became both medicine and meaning. Bike rides along the Malibu coast replaced red carpets. Simple conversations replaced negotiations. In these ordinary moments, Simon found extraordinary peace. Beyond the walls of his home, the empire he had built continued to function with quiet efficiency. Got Talent and The X Factor remained global forces, generating immense revenue and sustaining a fortune that few could fathom. His properties spanned continents. A $24 million oceanfront residence in Malibu overlooking the Pacific. A grand London estate surrounded by history and gardens. A Manhattan penthouse gazing over Central Park. Garages filled with Ferraris. Rolls-Royces, Aston Martins, and a Bugatti Veyron stood silent, relics of a life once in perpetual motion. A private jet, once essential, now rested more often than it flew. Wealth, Simon realized, had lost its grip on him. He spoke openly about refusing to leave vast inheritance to his son, not out of cruelty, but conviction. Eric would inherit values, not excess. Foundations supporting children's healthcare, creative education, and opportunity became his focus. Scholarships, mentorship, pathways for those who might otherwise remain unseen. Simon redirected privilege into purpose, shaping a legacy not defined by possessions but by impact. Cosmetic interventions that once promised control were now memories he faced without shame. His face bore lines earned through survival. Silver threaded his hair. He no longer chased youth. He chased memories. Time with Eric, moments that could never be bought or replaced. Fragility and resilience coexisted in every step he took. Each day required effort. Each morning demanded courage. Yet he embraced it, understanding that endurance itself was a form of grace. Television appearances became rare and intentional. When Simon spoke, audiences noticed a shift. The sharpness remained, but it was tempered by empathy. Judgment softened to guidance. Authority gave way to mentorship. The feared critic had evolved into a steady presence, offering insight shaped by scars rather than arrogance. Ratings no longer dictated his worth. Applause no longer defined success. Presence did. Charitable work filled the space once occupied by relentless ambition, charity concerts, creative incubators, programs designed to uplift talent without exploitation, initiatives focused on healthcare and education. Simon invested not in visibility, but in lives he might never meet. This quiet generosity stood in stark contrast to the man once synonymous with ruthless judgment. Those closest to him recognized the transformation. The empire builder had become a steward of opportunity. At home, the truest victories unfolded. Stretching carefully at dawn, teaching Eric music, sharing laughter under dim lamps. These moments carried more weight than any award ceremony ever had. Simon Cowell, once defined by power and spectacle, now found meaning in gentler measures. Time protected. Love given freely. Presence offered without condition. Behind the legend stood a father clinging fiercely to time. A philanthropist converting success into service. A survivor demonstrating that life's deepest lessons arrive not through triumph, but through endurance. His story was no longer about domination of an industry. It was about transformation of self. A reminder that even the most formidable figures are shaped and softened by what they survive. As the years settled into a quieter rhythm, Simon Cowell's story no longer thundered, it breathed. The man once synonymous with Saturday night tension and razor-edged verdicts now carried himself with a calm that came from having nothing left to prove. Survival had reordered his values. Scars had rewritten his priorities. He no longer measured success by reach or dominance, but by the steadiness of his days and the depth of his presence within them. Morning light found him moving carefully, listening to a body that had taught him humility the hard way. The spine that once betrayed him now dictated patience, and he honored it with discipline. Rehabilitation was not a chapter he finished. It was a practice he maintained. He learned to accept limitation without surrendering purpose. In that acceptance, a different kind of strength emerged, quiet, deliberate, unshowy, and unbreakable. His relationship with time changed most of all. Once a currency to be spent ruthlessly, it became something sacred to be protected. He chose fewer appearances, fewer flights, fewer battles. Each decision was filtered through a single question: would this steal time from what mattered most? More often than not, the answer was no. Presence won. At home, the small rituals carried the greatest weight. Shared meals prepared with care. Music drifting softly through rooms that once echoed with silence. Conversations unhurried. Laughter unforced. In these spaces, Simon found a fulfillment that fame had promised, but never delivered. Fatherhood anchored him. It steadied the restless ambition that had once driven him to the edge of collapse. He spoke less about conquest and more about continuity. Less about the future of television and more about the future of his son. The public still watched, of course, they always would. But the scrutiny no longer cut as deeply. He had endured worse. Scandal had tested his reputation. Loss had tested his heart. Injury had tested his body. Aging tested his vanity. And through each trial, something essential remained intact: the will to adapt, the courage to be honest, the capacity to love. His empire, humming quietly in the background, stood as evidence of a life of relentless effort. Formats he helped shape continued to travel the world. Careers he launched still filled arenas. The wealth he amassed remained vast, but it had been stripped of its power over him. He viewed it as responsibility rather than reward. Funds flowed toward causes designed to outlast him: healthcare for children, access to education, pathways for creativity to find safe ground. He understood that influence mattered most when it lifted others without demanding recognition. When he did return to television, viewers sensed the shift immediately. The sharpness was still there, honed by decades of experience, but it was guided by empathy. Critique came with context, truth arrived with care. The feared judge had become a measured mentor, not softer, wiser, not diminished, deepened. He knew now that honesty did not require cruelty, and authority did not require distance. In rare interviews, Simon spoke with a reflective clarity that surprised those who remembered only the bravado. He acknowledged mistakes without deflection. He spoke of exhaustion without shame. He admitted fear without bravado. Vision, once the foundation of his career, had become precious and fragile, reminding him daily of what could be lost. The idea of not seeing clearly, of missing details, expressions, moments, terrified him more than any negative headline. It sharpened his resolve to stay present, to look closely, to savor. Evenings closed gently, stories read slowly. Music shared not for performance, but for connection. These were not interludes between greater achievements, they were the achievement. In choosing this life, Simon did not abandon ambition. He refined it. The goal was no longer expansion, but depth. Looking back, the arc of his journey revealed a truth many never learn until it is too late. Power can amplify, but it cannot heal. Wealth can provide, but it cannot replace. Applause can validate, but it cannot love. Simon Cowell learned this through the hardest lessons, through loss, through pain, through survival in full view of the world. And in learning it, he transformed. His legacy, still unfolding, would not be defined solely by stars discovered or formats exported. It would live in quieter places, in a child's confidence nurtured without pressure, in opportunities created without spectacle, in moments chosen over milestones, in the courage to slow down before life demanded it. The story that began in a mailroom did not end in an empire. It arrived here in presence and humility and endurance. A man once feared for his judgment, now respected for his humanity. A life that proves the greatest reinvention is not public, but personal. In the closing stretch of his journey, Simon Cowell stands as a living contradiction to the myth he once embodied. The myth said power hardens, that influence isolates, that time bends to the will of those who command it. His life proved otherwise. Time did not bend, it taught. Power did not protect, it exposed. And influence, when stripped of ego, became responsibility. There are moments now when Simon pauses, not from hesitation, but from awareness. He listens more than he speaks. He studies faces not to judge, but to understand. The instincts that once hunted for stardom now search for sincerity. In quiet reflection, he recognizes how close he came to losing everything that matters, not once, but repeatedly. Each escape left a mark, each survival carried a cost, and each cost reshaped him. He understands now that legacy is not declared. It is revealed, often long after the noise fades. The world may remember the sharp remarks, the viral moments, the empires built on primetime television. But those closest to him will remember something else. The nights he chose to stay home, the mornings he chose patience over urgency, the way he learned to say no without guilt, the way he learned to be present without performance. Simon's relationship with his own reflection changed as well. He no longer flinched at age or imperfection. The mirror told a story he finally accepted, one of survival etched into lines and pauses, of battles fought privately and publicly, of resilience earned, not claimed. Where once he sought control, he now allowed truth. Where once he pursued approval, he now offered understanding. He speaks rarely about fear, but it lives quietly in him. Fear of losing sight, fear of losing time, fear of outliving purpose. Yet these fears no longer paralyze, they guide. They remind him to protect what cannot be replaced, to cherish what cannot be insured, to slow down while slowing down is still a choice. When Simon thinks about the young man he once was, the invisible mailroom clerk, the bankrupt dreamer crying alone, he feels neither shame nor pride. He feels compassion. That boy survived so the man could exist. The failures were not detours. They were preparation. Every humiliation, every rejection, every silence carved the endurance required to survive what came later. He no longer romanticizes struggle, but he honors it. He understands that resilience is not about never breaking. It is about learning how to stand differently after you do. His life became proof that reinvention is not a single moment, but a series of choices made again and again, often when no one is watching. To the public, Simon Cowell may always be a symbol of modern entertainment. To himself, he is something simpler. A father protecting time, a survivor protecting health, a human being protecting meaning. He knows now that applause fades faster than memory, and that memory is built in ordinary moments repeated with care. The greatest irony of his life is this. The man who shaped the dreams of millions discovered his own fulfillment only when he stopped chasing the world, when he allowed himself to step back, when he accepted that enough had finally been achieved, not in trophies or formats, but in growth. As the years continue, Simon carries forward not as an untouchable icon, but as a witness to loss, to endurance, to transformation. His story does not instruct through perfection, but through survival, through the courage to change direction after pain, through the humility to admit that success without presence is hollow. And in that truth, his journey reaches its quiet power. Not a grand finale, not a triumphant curtain call, but a steady, grounded continuation. A life no longer driven by fear of falling behind, but guided by the wisdom of having nearly lost everything. In the quiet aftermath of everything he survived, Simon Cowell's life settles into a cadence that no longer seeks permission from the world. There is no urgency to explain himself now. No hunger to be understood by those who only ever knew the surface. The years of exposure taught him that misunderstanding is inevitable, but self-betrayal is optional. He chose peace over persuasion. When he looks back across the span of his life, he does not see a straight ascent or a single defining triumph. He sees chapters shaped by contradiction, confidence born from insecurity, authority forged through rejection, compassion carved out of loss. Each version of himself necessary, none disposable. The ruthless judge, the broken son, the grieving mentor, the cautious survivor, the present father. All of them coexist within him, layered rather than replaced. There are moments, often in silence, when memories surface uninvited. The mailroom corridors where no one learned his name. The nights of failure when hope felt irresponsible. The roar of crowds that followed years later. The hospital rooms where applause meant nothing. He allows these memories to pass without judgment now. They are not weights. They are witnesses. Simon understands something few at the height of influence ever do. That relevance is fleeting, but impact endures. Trends dissolve. Formats evolve. But the way you treat people lingers long after the cameras turn away. This realization reshaped how he measures his days, not by reach, but by integrity, not by dominance, but by care, not by how many listen, but by how deeply he listens in return. His relationship with work remains, but it is no longer consuming. Projects are chosen carefully, aligned with values rather than velocity. He mentors more than he commands, guides more than he critiques. The sharp eye remains, but it is accompanied by patience earned through pain. He knows now that talent is fragile, and that those who seek it are often carrying invisible wounds of their own. At home, time unfolds gently. There's no performance here. No need to be formidable, only present. Simon has learned that love does not demand perfection, only consistency. Showing up, staying, listening, protecting space for growth without pressure. These lessons, once foreign to him, are now instinctive. They guide him more reliably than instinct ever did in boardrooms or studios. The world continues to speculate about his health, his future, his wealth, his choices. He no longer feels compelled to correct the record. Some truths are lived, not defended. What matters most to him is not how the story is told, but how it is felt by those who share his life away from the spotlight. In moments of reflection, Simon acknowledges the irony that only through loss did he gain clarity. Only through slowing down did he discover direction. Only through breaking did he learn what was worth protecting. These are not lessons he would have chosen, but they are lessons he honors. They gave him a second life within the first. His legacy, still unfolding, will not be contained in archives or rankings. It will exist in quieter continuities, in opportunities created without fanfare, in lives steadied by guidance offered without ego, in a child growing up unburdened by expectation yet grounded in values, in a man who learned, finally, that enough is not a destination, but a decision. Simon Cowell's story does not conclude with triumph or tragedy. It continues with intention, with restraint, with awareness. A life once defined by judgment, now guided by understanding. A voice once feared, now measured and calm. A figure once larger than life, now fully human. And in that humanity lies the truest accomplishment of all. Comment 65 or write "Rip Simon Cowell" to honor them.